if I could title this or tag it, I would say fear to faith.
Yes.
Amen.
Now the book of Esther is really the story of the greatest threat of the survival of the Jewish people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now many years before Esther's story begins, history reveals itself that King Nebuchadnezzar came to Jerusalem for the third time. This time destroying the walls, the city, and the temple.
Yeah.
You see, which was God's house. It was the symbol of his presence.
Yes.
Most of the people there were taken into Babylonian captivity for 70 years. And now, of course, the book of Jeremiah revealed that Jeremiah had a few, and as well a few survivors who actually stayed in Jerusalem. Stay with me. I know some of you all are like, but what does this have to do with Esther? I'm going to get there. Just walk with me a little bit. And so here is God. God predicted through the prophet Isaiah that the strong king by the name of Cyrus would defeat Babylon and her gods. And it was in 539 BC that Babylon fell to the Persian Empire. And it was a year later that they would literally, King Cyrus would issue a decree stating that Jews were allowed to leave Babylon and return to their beloved city and rebuild the temple under the civil leadership of Zerubbabel and the spiritual guidance of Joshua the high priest.
Right.
Yes.
So the next group, I would say, of 50,000 Jews traveled and they arrived in Jerusalem and began the work. And they laid the foundation for the temple. But because of course, opposition, as we all know, it was the Sumerian people. It was the inside folks who really stopped, and the work on the temple stopped, and it was not resumed until God raised up. It was Haggai and Zechariah 16 years later and commissioned them to preach the need to complete the project. And well, over a 4-month period, Haggai delivered some 4 simple messages, and the messages explain that the land is in lack of productivity because the temple lay in ruin and the land was still unclaimed. The other 2 words was assurance that God was supporting the project and would literally prosper them. Throughout these messages, Haggai understood this notion that rebuilding of the temple was not an end to itself. You see, it was a temple, what was the representation of God's dwelling place, his manifestation of presence with his people. So the destruction of the temple by King Nebuchadnezzar followed the departure of God's dwelling glory. And so the rebuilding of the temple invited the return of God's presence to their midst, and as well as encouragement with the promises, of course, of greater peace and greater prosperity and greater rulership and blessings upon blessings upon blessings upon blessings. But the people responded to the challenge, and the rebuilding of the temple was completed 4 years later. That's the story. That's the history. But for me, does anybody really wonder whatever happened to the other Jews? The other Jews that did not go to freedom. Well, history reveals that the Jews who did not return, they remain in Babylon. They remain in captivity. Now, to be fair, there were several factors involved in the decision to remain in Babylon, or to remain in captivity, let's be honest. Okay, so some Jews would have been too old to return. You see, it's been at least 70 years since the destruction of Jerusalem, and there were too many who would have been unable to endure the journey, or if anything, to travel 900 miles. The same would have been true for the families with the young children and those who were sick or disabled. You see, see, some of the Jews probably refused to move out of comfort in Babylon. How is it that you are comfortable in captivity? I still do not know. But many of them were born in Babylon during the exile, and they knew nothing else. And so further, many Jews had attained some type of significant status during the reign of Cyrus. They became established and successful while in prison. What I don't understand is how you gonna become established in a thing that was never meant for you to stay there.
Come on.
That was never meant to hold you there. I don't understand. You see, the problem is sometimes we allow our conditions to be our permanent address when God gave you the plan of escape, and instead of running towards the exit, you made a whole beeline back to captivity. I don't understand that, Dr. Grayle. When God gives you a plan of escape, why not take it? Why not take it? And so now, instead of going towards freedom, you walk yourself back into bondage, back to the place where you have been sabotaged, where you have been lied on, where you've been cheated on, where you have been misrepresented. How is it that when God is trying to do a new thing and push you towards a new direction, you allow fear to overrule, you allow fear to subside your faith, exactly when God has already proven to you who He is? One of the reasons, some Jews would have returned to Jerusalem was a concern for safety. And so the road to Jerusalem in the land of Judea, it was covered with threats. In fact, you see, Ezra led those with him in a time of prayer and fasting for their safety on the journey back. But see, the interesting thing is, Ezra prayed and they fast, and so it was literally a quick journey for them. It probably should have taken 6 or 8 or maybe even a year to complete. They completed this thing in only 4 months. Good God Almighty. See, this is what I'm saying. You just trust God just a little bit. You just trust God just a little bit. He will make ways for you. He will open up some doors for you. You don't have to worry about a thing. Except now people are locked up in bondage where all they could have taken was maybe 4 months just to get to their freedom. It's not easy for them, and some realize that we don't want to work. Say they didn't want to work. That was really the other reason they didn't want to work. You see, the challenge to rebuild an entire city, including the city wall, the Jews decided it would be easier to just remain in bondage. But we realized that, guess what? A little bit later on, they're going to find themselves in some trouble. Esther and her family were among the Jews who stayed behind, living in exile in Persia. And so the story of Esther, it takes place during the reign of King of Persia, and primarily in the king's palace in Suda. And so here we are. It opens up with them having a whole party, y'all. It begins with Queen Vashti refusing to obey an order from her husband, King Xerxes, and she was literally banished. And the search began for a new queen. A new queen. And the king sent out a decree to gather all of the beautiful young women in the empire and begin to bring them into the royal palace. Esther, she was a young Jewish woman whose parents had died and had adopted her older cousin, who was adopted by her older cousin Mordecai, and was one who was chosen. And when it was Esther's turn to go before the king, he immediately found her to be the most attractive and beautiful of all the women, and he placed the royal crown on her head. You see here, the king then held this beautiful banquet for the new queen, Esther. And so she would continue, even at this point, to hide her Jewish background as Mordecai had instructed her to do, because he knew it would be dangerous for her if anyone found out who she really was. You see, meanwhile, Mordecai, Esther's older cousin, became a government official and during this tenure uncovered an assassination plot. And one night when Mordecai was sitting by the king's gate, he heard two guards conspiring to assassinate the king. You see, Mordecai told told Queen Esther of the plan, and Esther told the king, giving credit to Mordecai for overhearing the plan. I want y'all to sit right there with me. And so the two guards were then hung. And and when this ambitious and self-serving Haman was appointed to second in command in the empire, Mordecai refused to bow in reverence to his name. And when Haman found out about this, and Mordecai was a Jew, Haman became furious. He was upset, and he was determined to kill not only just Mordecai, but all of the Jewish nation. All of the Jewish nation. And so this is what happened. So to accomplish this very deed, Haman received the king and persuaded him to issue an edict commending and commanding that all of the Jews be put to death. And so the king agrees, and he sets a date for the Jews to be killed. Good God Almighty. And so Mordecai told Esther about the king's edict to kill all the Jewish people. And Esther began to fear for her life and tried to avoid his request to do something. But Mordecai again went back to Queen Esther and said, if you remain silent at this time, please know that relief and deliverance will arise from a new place. And your father's house will be perished. And who knows that you have come to a royal position for such a time as this. You see, Esther sent this reply back to Mordecai, and she simply says, well, then go and tell all the Jews who are in Suda and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days or a night. And I and my maids will fast as you do. And when this is done, I will go to the king. And even though it's against the law, if I perish, I perish. And so Mordecai went away and carried out Esther's instructions. Family, we are in a passage this morning where God's name is not mentioned.
That's right.
And so I was intrigued. And I began to study and I began to research, and I said, well, Daddy, why? How come? Why ain't your name? Why ain't your name in this book? Because I realized that you are still at work. How come your name is not here? And he said, well, Wanda, I want you to tell the people this morning this one thing. This is the only thing I want you to tell them. He said, just because my name is not mentioned, it doesn't mean I'm not there. Good God Almighty. So we are in a whole book. And the name of God is not mentioned in it. But somehow his presence is there. And he just wanted me to tell somebody this morning. The only point is, just because my name is not mentioned, it does not mean I'm not there. Here he's making a very matter-of-fact declaration that he expected a divine deliverance. You see, Mordecai told Esther that if you remain silent at this time, that relief and deliverance for the Jews will rise from another place. You see, Mordecai is confident that God will not allow the destruction of his people without naming his name. He implies that there is a trust in his gracious promises and a conviction that Haman's plan will be blocked. How is it that Mordecai was so confident that God will send send a deliverer. And well, I did some more studying and I did some more researching. And what I found out, and you don't have to believe me, but definitely do it yourself, it was that Mordecai and Esther, they come from a lineage called the tribe of Benjamin. They come from a tribe of Benjamin. And although they were small in number, they made up with being a fierce protector. God Almighty. Don't get me wrong. You see, they were messy back in the day. They started some things, but they yet ended some things as well. But somewhere between messy and holiness, God began to just walk some things out for them. What was crooked, they began to get straight. So Mordecai already knew. Esther already knew that we are from the tribe of Benjamin. And so that means something. That means that we saw some things in our past. That means that we knew what God is able to do. And so here was the thing. There was a conversation that begins to happen. And so I found out that in Deuteronomy, the 33rd chapter and the 12th verse, scripture reveals that the people of Benjamin are loved by the Lord and live in safety beside him. He surrounds them constantly and preserves them from every harm. And now I can see why Mordecai had an assurance in God. I can understand why Mordecai had an assurance in God's promises, because it was already declared that God would preserve them from everything, not a little bit of something, not some of those things, but from everything. Oh God. And so one translation states this, that he will shield them all day long. Oh God, for this was the assurance of God, good God Almighty. And so, which was the tribe of Benjamin? Oh, they would come and they would protect, and it was a different type of protection. It was a protection that had providence to it, because they were between God's shoulders. It really remains. What is Esther's decision? What is she going to do? You know, she sees and she understands that she's risking her life by unlawfully entering the king's presence without him summoning her. And so what she did was she went back to the basics and asked to declare these words: go and gather yourself, all the Jews who are in Suda, and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. And I and my maids, meaning that everybody I'm connected to will do the same thing. She said 3 days, y'all. She made a decision. Her decision was, if I perish, I perish. Oh, that's what you know. Well, you know, you're a tribe of Benjamin. If I perish, I perish. And I already told y'all that she is a fierce protector. And so everything that's in her, she's coming for you. She's going to do anything but necessary to cover what God has given her.
That's right.
Oh, my God, my God. And so she gets ready to do battle. And I can almost see my sister girl taking off one earring and snatching off the other, tossing her hair in a ponytail, and she is getting ready to walk into her prayer closet. My God, to pray to the only wise God, to pray to the eternal one. Esther had enough knowledge and foresight that in order for my people to be saved, I got to go to God who has the greatest power. And I'm sure she remembered that because he did it in Babylon, he will show enough do it. And it was a very clear indication that fasting was needed, and that prayer was also needed. And so when I think about the people who was fasting in the Bible, Moses ran across my table and he fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. It was on the Mount Sinai receiving the law from God. Nehemiah had a time of prayer and fasting upon learning that Jerusalem was still in ruins. You see, even Darius, the king of Persia, he fasted all night after he was forced to put Daniel in the lion's den. Oh God. Fasting and praying. Even in the New Testament, we had Anna worshiping night and day, fasting and praying. Oh my God, we even had John the Baptist who taught his disciples to fast. You see, even Jesus fasted for 40 days and 40 nights before his temptation by Satan. You see the church of Antioch fasted and fasted and sent Paul and Barnabas on their first missionary journey. You see, Paul and Barnabas spent time in prayer and fasting for the appointment and for the elders of the church. We have to have a time of praying and fasting. It's not a way of manipulating God into doing what you desire. It's just simply forcing yourself to focus and receive from God the strength and the provision and the wisdom. It was C.S.L. Lewis who described this thought very well when he said, I pray because the need flows out of me all the time. Waking and sleeping. It doesn't change God, but it does change me. God said, just because my name isn't mentioned, it doesn't mean I'm not there. You see, I was there with Esther when she became queen. You see, God was there when Mordecai was at the right place at the right time, overhearing a conversation regarding a death plot, and he saved the king's life. You see, God was there when he kept the king up at night and he decided to read a history book, and he read the exact page needed for the moment. And there was God when Haman's plan was reverted, and what the intended victims are now the victors. The same way that God was there for Esther and Mordecai, He's there for you. Do you see God fingerprint on your life? Do you see Him behind the scenes, shifting the necessary pieces? Or are you willing to look at your position and see God? Family, where does God have you for such a time as this? Who is your sphere of influence? What physical location does He have in you where you can make a difference? What circumstances are you currently going through that could be a platform to display God's power for such a time as this? When God calls you, you can be assured that He equips His people. You will say, God, I'll take the step of faith. Boldly use me here, and how to make a difference. Teach me for such a time as this. Psalms 32:8 says, I will instruct you and teach you the way you should go. I will counsel you with my loving eye on you.